Welcome to the Plays the Thing podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Barbara.
And today we're talking about Shakespeare's comedy As You Like It. We've seen 2 live productions, one at Cincinnati Shakespeare Company and one at the Michigan Shakespeare Festival. What'd you think?
I really liked it. It's funny, it's romantic, some really memorable characters and settings.
I really enjoyed it too. I think it's one of my favorite Shakespeare comedies. The story is based on a popular romance novel of 1590 by Thomas Lodge called Rosalind,
Which is also the name of Shakespeare's main character in this play.
who happens to have the largest female role in Shakespeare's canon, bigger even than Shakespeare's Cleopatra, I'm afraid.
There's Rosalind's father, just called the Duke, her young gentleman lover Orlando, Celia, her cousin and devoted friend.
Also Touchstone, the court jester, and a cynic wandering the woods whose name is spelled Jaqueus, so you might think it's Jacques, but it's usually pronounced Jacques or even Jakes. So, what happens?
Orlando is being terribly mistreated by his older brother, Oliver, who actually schemes to have Orlando killed, encouraging the terrifying professional wrestler Charles to break Orlando's neck in their upcoming bout.
It's at this match that Celia and Rosalind meet Orlando, and Orlando and Rosalind fall in love at first sight, as often happens in Shakespeare.
And in real life,
So what happens next?
Celia's father, Frederick, who has seized the dukedom from Rosalind's father and banished him, decides that Rosalind also needs to go and throws her out of the court. Celia can't stand to be without her best friend, so she decides to go with her to the Forest of Arden, where they think Rosalind's father, the Duke, is hiding out. For her own protection on the journey, Rosalind disguises herself as a boy, as women so often do in Shakespeare.
And in real life? On their way out the door, the 2 young ladies grab some gold and the sympathetic court jester, Touchstone.
What kind of a trip would it be without money and a jester?
Meanwhile, Orlando has figured out his brother is trying to kill him, so he takes off as well. And you just know Orlando and Rosalind are going to run into each other in the woods.
Of course.
Which sets up the central conceit of the play. Orlando, nailing mediocre love poems about Rosalind to the trees, comes across the disguised Rosalind. Of course, he doesn't recognize her, So
she, as the boy Ganymede, invites Orlando to his woodland cottage where she will teach Orlando how to properly make love by pretending to be Rosalind. Got it?
I think so. And since in Shakespeare's day all the female parts were played by boys or young men, you have a boy playing the part of Rosalind, a girl disguised as Ganymede, a boy pretending to be Rosalind,
a girl.
Something that definitely does not happen in real life.
So how does it all turn out?
Well, it is our policy at the Plays the Thing not to spoil the endings, but since this is a comedy,
true love wins out in the end.
There's a lot of loving going on in the woods of Arden. Let's just leave it at that.
So, are there any words in this play that might trip people up?
A few. The word brave does not usually mean courageous in Shakespeare, but something more like excellent, splendid, or worthy. As when Celia teases Rosalind about Orlando, quote,
"Oh, that's a brave man. He writes brave verses, speaks brave words, swears brave oaths, and breaks them bravely."
Also, the word honest is typically used to characterize a woman's chastity, as in the scene where the court jester Touchstone is trying to seduce the girl Audrey.
Would you not have me honest?
No, truly.
Any famous speeches in As You Like It?
One of the most well-known speeches in Shakespeare, actually, the All the World's a Stage speech.
Given by Jacques, the cynic, who wanders around the woods and at times addresses the banished Duke and his merry band of fellow nobles.
Some scholars think that As You Like It was one of the first plays staged at the Globe Playhouse in London, which opened in 1599. If so, the All the World's a Stage speech probably has a double meaning, with world in all the world referring to the Globe, the name of the new playhouse.
We had some fun with that speech ourselves. Check it out.
all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. Then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank. And his big manly voice turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Not quite the way you're likely to see this speech performed on stage.
Not quite.
How about the performance history of the play? Anything interesting?
One oddity I came across. In the 19th century, the play was very popular among the male theater-going public, but not for the reason you might think. By then, of course, female roles were played by women, but women always dressed very modestly, completely covered up, whether on stage or elsewhere. But Rosalind, in her disguise as the boy Ganymede, would be dressed in hose and short pants, according to the Elizabethan style. So her legs would be visible in the tight hose, which was considered very exciting and risque.
In other words, the actress's feminine physique was more evident to the eye when dressed as a man than as a woman.
Exactly. It's not quite the same today. So what about the performances we saw? Anything stand out for you?
Well, Jacques, the wandering cynic, was played by a woman in the Michigan Shakespeare Festival and worked really well.
One thing I'll always remember from the Cincinnati production was the wrestler Charles. The actor they put in that role was extraordinarily tall, like a giant. And he wasn't one of the regular company members, so no one had seen him before. When he first came out on stage, there was an audible gasp from the audience.
You never know what you're going to get in a live theater production.
Right. That's what makes it fun.